Wuthering Heights, as told by Leah Michelle. I watched it. I went to that cinema and I took my little notepad and I wrote down my thoughts as the movie was playing because here's the thing. I've never actually read the book. I did, however, have to read the equivalent, a Portuguese novel called Os Maias by Essa de Queiroz. And the story is a love tale between a man and a woman who, by the end of the book, find out they are brother and sister. Full incest. Yeah. So as you can see, I had my plate full with our own historical literature pieces of work that you teach to 16-year-old kids. Just incest. So Wuthering Heights is a loose adaptation of the novel, and Emerald Fennell, the director, has clarified several times this is her interpretation of the book. It's how she imagined the story to be, which is how we got a white Heathcliff. Yes, the whitewashing allegations. As you may know by now, Jacob Elordi was cast as Heathcliff, and as someone who's never read the novel, I took to the internet to figure out why there was backlash over his casting, and it turns out it's because the character that he plays is described as dark-skinned, not white at all. However, people online were very quick to defend Emerald's decision of casting a white man because according to them, Heathcliff could have been white because this was such a rural, isolated white British town that anyone who looked remotely non-white or slightly tan even would be seen as an outsider. And also, Heathcliff was more so described as a man of color to further distance him class-wise from the owners of Wuthering Heights. So they want you to believe that this was perfectly believable, that this man looking like this would get to a British town and they'd look at him and think, that man does not belong here. I'm not a historian, nor am I British, nor have I read the book. However, I do think it's interesting that there are two characters that have been race swapped, and that is Heathcliff and Edgar. For those of you who don't know, Wuthering Heights is a long-ass novel, and as far as I know from this movie, there's a love story between Heathcliff and Catherine. There's a lot of jealousy, a lot of possession, toxicity surrounding these two characters. It's a love they never fully consummate because of stuff, the vibes just weren't good. And in the novel, Catherine marries Edgar, and in the novel, Edgar is described as having fair skin and fair hair. And in the movie, he's played by this actor. Whereas Heathcliff is described as a dark-skinned, gypsy-looking orphan, and they cast this guy. And Emerald said that this was her interpretation of the novel. In fact, she even said that we should have an adaptation of the book every year, and then everyone could sort of pick and choose the elements that they like of the novel. She also said that she decided to include stuff that maybe she wanted to have happened and they didn't happen in the novel, stuff that she added on. In fact, when she started writing the script, she wrote the stuff that she remembered and then she read the novel and realized that obviously a lot of the details weren't matching, but it didn't matter. It was her vision. And I find it very interesting that in her vision, the man that Catherine lusts after is a white man, and the man that she has to marry and that she's terribly unhappy with is a man of color, when in the novel, it was the exact opposite. And again, I'm not a historian and I didn't read the novel, but I feel like those elements play some sort of role in how the story happens, how the story develops. So for these elements to be changed and for her to say that it's just how she imagined the story, and you can kind of see where the concern may come from. But you know what? That's neither here nor there. Like I said, I haven't read the book and I'm not British. I did, however, watch the movie with fresh eyes. I feel like I'm the target audience for this movie because I don't know the story. I don't know anything about it. I don't have any expectations for any characters, for any storylines. I was just ready to be wowed. The movie was marketed as this love story for the ages, full of erotica and BDSM elements. It was promised to be very sexy, very passionate, just a torrid love affair with a beautiful soundtrack by Charlie XCX. And the end result was really, really, really underwhelming. Maybe I had high expectations having seen both of her previous movies, A Promising Young Woman and Saltburn. I expected this to really be sexy and to, I guess, be a microcosm of this overarching bigger story, and she would just pick and choose the elements and add some of her flair to make this a really punchy love story. And it just never connected. First of all, the movie is beautiful. Oh my God. The visuals. The visuals are to die for. Every shot feels carefully framed and carefully constructed, that every detail matters, everything was intentional, and I think that visually speaking, the movie is gorgeous, especially those short sequences in the middle of the movie that feel like a music video for Charlie XCX's songs, even though they're part of the film, looks gorgeous. The music itself, I feel like will work better on its own, like away from the film. I don't understand why it was done the way it was. I sort of expected this to take a sort of surrealist turn, or maybe she would add fantastical elements that would pull the story away from reality, and then we would get those more modern songs by Charlie XCX, and it would create these like very beautiful, vivid moments that you can tell are just fantastical in nature. But we didn't get that. We really didn't get any of that. It was a very grounded story. Sure, there were a couple of shots where, the lighting played a role, and it was obviously altered to make it look cinematic and beautiful and spectacular. But most of the story is just very grounded and boring. And it only works because, it was the age pre-internet, pre-phones. A lot of people need to talk and they just don't. It's a lot of misunderstandings. It's one of those stories that works because it is a tale of its time, and you really have to suspend your disbelief, because for most of the story, even considering this is set in the 1700s or the 1800s, like, are we for real? I don't want to spoil anyone, but there's a moment where they just keep sending letters and no answer is coming, like weeks pass by. And I'm just like, just get on your horse and go to the house. Like, make your presence known. You really want to speak to her? Show up, do something. But no. And I guess that's to conclude on a very tragic note. And I have seen a lot of people that have exited the cinema crying, and I wish I was one of them. I really wanted this story to hit, but it didn't. You know what did hit though? Margot Robbie. Wow. Just wow. Margot Robbie in this film made me think how lucky she is that when she gets to an old age, she'll have all of this footage of her just looking so beautiful. 50% of this movie is just Margot Robbie looking absolutely beautiful. It was very distracting, like distractingly beautiful. You know what else is distracting? Heathcliff's skin. Another one of those elements that was really distracting, because this is a story set in the 17 or 1800s, and here comes Jacob Elordi with perfectly shaven skin, like there's not a single bump in sight. There's no acne. None of these people have acne. Acne has not been invented. Bad teeth are a myth. It's one of those things where you do have to sacrifice realism for the fantasy of the story, because if these people were historically accurate, no one would be fantasizing about them doing anything in private. No. I'm not going to go through all of the changes of the novel, but I do know a few of the changes. One of the main ones being the age of the characters. I think that for a big portion of the novel, Catherine is 15, yet they obviously cast 35-year-old Margot Robbie to play a character who is the same age as 28-year-old Jacob Elordi. In fact, the main three characters, Nellie, Catherine, and Heathcliff, are all presented as pretty much the same age, whereas in real life, they are all pretty much separated by nearly a decade in real life. And that's the beauty of movies. You really suspend your disbelief and you look at Margot Robbie, a woman in her 30s, and think, yeah, she looks exactly the same as that woman in her 40s and that man in his 20s. That is one of many changes that Emerald has done to this movie to avoid certain discomforts. One of them being, of course, the age of the character and the stuff that she presumably goes through in the novel. I'm not privy to it because I didn't read it, but I know a lot of it is fucked up. In fact, a lot of the elements of the book, I think, criticize or offer commentary on society of the time. And all of those elements, it's all around race and class, wealth, all of that is completely foregone, ignored, so that we can focus on this love story that never gets to be. So you'd expect the love story to really be the driving force behind this movie, but I never felt the connection between the characters. We see them a little bit as kids, and then we see them as adults for the rest of the film, and I never find it believable that they yearn this much for each other. I also think the movie may have been slightly mismarketed because, again, we were promised a lot of sexy moments and erotica and this passionate torrid love affair that never really happens until we're like 82, 83 minutes into the film. An hour and 20 minutes until they actually get to doing something like intimate. That's crazy. That is a long time for them to build this relationship between the two. And yet, because of misunderstandings and because of, I think, the structure that they chose to tell this story in, I think it relies too much on the visuals and the silence of the yearning. And they forget to make us care, or at least to make me care. I couldn't care less. Beyond the visuals and beyond the beautiful shots and the color grading and how everything is framed and how beautiful Margot looks. Jesus, gets so distracting. Apart from all of that, I just couldn't give two shits about these people. Nellie's a fucking icon. She is the in charge. She's manipulating everyone, like playing with everyone like they're her puppets. But other than that, I found it very dull. But I will be going through the plot a little bit. I'll break down. In fact, I'll break down my thoughts as I was watching the events unfold, because not a lot happens in the film per se. Like it's quite a simple story. I did to an extent expect her to make significant changes, considering how loosely based on the novel the movie is anyway. I really thought that she was going to surprise us, but no, she doesn't. She's actually very tame. It's a very tame love story. Yeah. Anyway, subscribe down below if you haven't already. Get a snack, get a drink, and let's get into this plot and my thoughts as it happened. I think from the very beginning, the movie really sets the expectations, and it's so diabolical. Like, for a minute, I think the screen is black, and we hear a man moaning and groaning, and it feels like he's climaxing. And then the movie actually opens, and it turns out it's a man asphyxiating to death. He's been hung in public. There's a bunch of people watching him. Then a kid points out to his friends that the dying man has a stiffy. They laugh, and when the man is dead, the crowd erupts in celebration, and two implications I take from this beginning. First, erotic asphyxiation is a very real thing, and the fact that he's asphyxiating in front of all these people and then gets a stiffy, I just know that we're gonna see some sex and violence intermingle throughout the movie. And the other one is that the crowd is literally celebrating public execution. Depravity is daily bread and butter for these people, so we can expect them to be pretty amoral and mean throughout. Characters, we have three main ones. We have Catherine, Kathy Earnshaw, we got Heathcliff, and Nellie Dean. Nellie Dean is a paid companion of Catherine, and Heathcliff is a sort of adopted son of Catherine's father. He's brought home one day after her father comes back from travels, and he gifts the boy to his daughter and tells her that he's her pet, and she names him after her late brother, Heathcliff. Nellie is a paid companion of Kathy and acts almost like her servant, and she's like the voice of reason that tries to keep Kathy from being reckless or behaving badly. But Kathy is very spoiled, and she's kind of mean. She mistreats Heathcliff several times until they eventually kind of start getting along, and then they get closer and closer, and one day, in their childhood, a very meaningful event happens. They get stuck outside in the rain for hours and hours, and when they return, this was entirely Kathy's fault, by the way. Kathy's father, who is an alcoholic and a gambling addict, has a violent outburst, and Heathcliff takes the blame for Kathy and accepts the punishment. And the punishment, I think he gets whipped a bunch of times in his back, and it leaves him full of scars. And then later that night, they cuddle up in bed, and he promises to never leave her. And this is sort of, I guess, the start of their romance. We then cut to the future, and they are grown-ups. Heathcliff has a horrible wig. Catherine is a and Nellie is a superstar, the unsung hero of this film. By this point, Kathy's father has basically gambled all of their fortune away, and Kathy needs to find some sort of security in her future. She wants to save herself and also sort of help Heathcliff, because Heathcliff is the servant of Wuthering Heights, and if Wuthering Heights is no more, then Heathcliff is also fucked. So Kathy takes an interest in her neighbor, Edgar, who has a girl living with him, not necessarily his daughter or a sister. She's like a ward. Her name is Isabella, and she's a freak. She's a freak, which I hear she isn't in the book, but we'll get to her in a second. I have thoughts. As adults, there's a lot of yearning. Kathy is very immature, or she's portrayed as slightly childish, and I think that was on purpose. Not necessarily because she's supposed to be young, but because she's supposed to be immature. She's never had to actually know adversity in life other than her father now being an alcoholic and having gambled all of their money away. But for her entire life, she was pretty much silver spoon up her ass. Heathcliff is not a fan of the idea of her getting married, but after Edgar proposes to her, she accepts. And she's kind of torn because she wants to be with Heathcliff, but Heathcliff is kind of broke and Edgar can secure a better future for her. And she has a habit of being a nasty little to Nellie. So when she's talking to Nellie and once again berates her, Nellie notices that Heathcliff is eavesdropping on their conversation. So she makes sure that Heathcliff hears Kathy disparaging him and admitting that she's about to marry Edgar. So Heathcliff, before Kathy even has a chance to speak to him, leaves. And Kathy, who immediately changed her mind and was about to call off the wedding, doesn't because Heathcliff is gone. A year later, Kathy marries Edgar and she starts living a lavish lifestyle with the riches that he provides. There's one moment in the movie where Isabella gives Kathy a doll that looks like her and has hair, and then Isabella admits that that's actually hair that she's been collecting from the hairbrush that Kathy has been using while she's been staying with them. Isabella is so weird. There's another moment where she gives a book of friendship as a Christmas gift to Kathy, and when she opens it, there's one page that has a 3D sculpture of a vagina made out of paper. Isabella was really crafty back then. And at one point in the film, Kathy visits her father, and she's got this outfit on that's so ridiculous. She is covered head to toe in this beautiful, what was it, a blue and red satin number. And her entire body is covered except her massive cleavage. Thinking, why? Why does she have to look this gorgeous while she's visiting her rotting father? I don't know, but it's fierce. 5 years later, and Kathy discovers that she is pregnant, which means she's been sleeping with Edgar. Edgar in the movie is actually really nice. Like he seems like a very kind man. And I'm guessing that in the book, he's a bit of an asshole. They all are, I think. But in the movie, he's quite inconsequential in a way. Like he's there, but he doesn't play that much of a role in the movie. Like his presence plays a bigger role than his actual physical presence does, if that makes sense. Like the character's important, but the actor not so much. Kathy's pregnant, and that's when Heathcliff returns. He's back with a haircut. I don't know what barber he went to, but you know what? The wig is gone. His natural hair is back. I just want to know who is styling these people? Heathcliff is back. Kathy wants Heathcliff, but she can't have him because she's married to Edgar. But she also doesn't want anyone to have Heathcliff because she wants Heathcliff. So when Isabella shows a shred of interest in Heathcliff, Kathy tries to humiliate her in front of him as if to say that he would never go for her or that she's not good enough for him. And then the old man dies. And it's so funny. The shot of him dead, he's in an empty room. And then there's like two massive piles of empty bottles on each side of the room, and he's just framed in the middle. How much alcohol was this man drinking? Like a hoarder. The only thing in the room are bottles and his corpse. Kathy goes to see him and she kicks him in anger, and then she runs off and it starts raining. Heathcliff goes after her and then she starts hitting him because she's angry because he left her and she's not even mad at him, and he's showing interest in Isabella. And then they finally clarify the miscommunication. Kathy finally figures out that Heathcliff heard what she said all those years ago about having to marry Edgar because marrying Heathcliff would be a disgrace almost. And all of this yearning, all of this intense passion, it's like 82 minutes into the movie at this point, or 80 minutes, and they still haven't done anything, but they're just so desperate for each other's touch. And I wish that I felt it. You know what I mean? Like, I wish that I really felt these two characters wanted each other as much as the movie is trying to tell us they do. It's not, I don't know. Maybe the chemistry was off. Or maybe it just took them too long that I got bored. Like, get to stepping. The movie had one job, and it was to deliver some sexy fun time. Since they're not going to do any of the other important themes of the novel, Nellie clocks Kathy straight away, and she's like, you're going to be careful, right? Like, does he know that you're expecting? And she tries to act all like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. You know exactly what you're talking about. Also, I forgot to mention, but they all have to do a British accent. But Jacob Elordi has the worst time of it because he has to do an accurate northern accent, which the actor who plays young Heathcliff could do really well because he is from the north of England. But Jacob Elordi, like Margot Robbie, is Australian. Yeah. And I will say his accent, I think, does sound good. I'm not British. I'm not an expert, but you can tell. You know what I mean? Like, you can tell that it's not as natural as it could be. And I don't know, maybe we should start casting actors that can actually speak like the characters they're supposed to be playing. Wouldn't want me to show up here doing a British accent when it's not good, would you? Maybe you would. After about 84, 85 minutes, they finally consummate their burning, passionate, fiery love in a very quick montage of a couple of scenes where he's pretty much going down on her and then she has to escape because, you know, they can't be caught together. I've been waiting for nearly an hour and a half, and that was all. Like, the scene went by so fast. I felt like the promises were underdelivered on this one. I think the most erotic scene that we get out of the film is when they're inside a carriage and they're just licking each other's faces. Like, there's a lot of tongue action and a lot of whispering into each other's mouths, which, again, if this was historically accurate, that'd be death zone. People had bad teeth back then. I don't think we talk about it enough. Like, dental hygiene was a real struggle back then for obvious reasons. But here they are, two perfectly coiffed white people with perfect, beautiful white teeth just making out in a very old carriage. This is what dreams are made of. Kathy finally finds out that Nellie knew Heathcliff was listening in on their conversation and made sure that Heathcliff heard her say all of that so he would leave. So she fires her effective immediate, but Nellie is smarter than her. She's like, oh, you want to fire me? Then I'm going to go to your husband and I'm going to tell him about the affair. So she snitches to Edgar, and Edgar is like, wife, maybe you should stop seeing Heathcliff. I think it's nice that you've been kind to him since he's been back, but enough is enough. So Kathy and Heathcliff have a furtive meeting in the middle of the night. Furtive, is that even the right word? I don't know, but I'm on a roll. And they get it on again. They start fucking. And then she's like, oh, we must stop. I'm with child. And he's like, I'll kill him for you. I'm so in love with you. I'll take him out. And she realizes, wait a minute. No, you can't kill him. This has gone too far. We should stop. And this is where I'm like, okay, well, now you're just doing shit for doing shit, because there's been so many changes to the story to the point where we don't even have to follow the narrative of the book anymore. It just doth not make sense that this is the line that Kathy draws. Like, Kathy's been so impulsively attracted to Heathcliff, basically sees him as her pet, as a possession, which is where this toxic, possessive, jealous love comes from. They very much should not be together. It's kind of creepy that they grew up as brother and sister and now they're fucking, but let's not get into that, because that reminds me of that Portuguese novel, Bad Memories. I just didn't think that this would be the line that Kathy would draw. Like, you know what? We shouldn't actually kill the man that is stopping us from being together. So she breaks it off with him completely, and as revenge, Heathcliff decides to marry Isabella. Now, Isabella is a very interesting character in the sense that in the book, she is severely abused by Heathcliff. In the movie, they changed it so that she's just a freak that can't get enough and loves the mistreatment. There's no depravity that is depraved enough for her, or too depraved even. And I'm on two minds on that one. On one end, I feel like it's a good thing that we are cutting out like all of the abuse towards women and replacing it with, I guess, a more empowering POV where the woman is actually taking control of her sexual life and she is the one who actively chooses to engage in these more nasty kinky behaviors, sure. But on the other hand, there's been some very fair criticism that this kind of disregards the abuse that the character has gone through, in some way even going as far as romanticizing the abuse, which I think might be a common theme in Emerald's work. I haven't seen Promising Young Woman in a while, so I'm not going to comment on that, but I do know that Saltburn has a weird mix of like depravity with like the sexual proclivities of rich people and how you have to basically exploit that to rise the ranks. And here again, she reduces this very dense novel down to a sadistic love story almost, where love, desire, possessiveness, kink, depravity, submission, degradation kind of like mesh together into a very complicated, convoluted string of emotions that I think it gets lost a little bit in the point. But he marries Isabella and he tells her straight away, like he visits her in her bedroom and he's like, I'm only doing this to spite Kathy. I'm going to marry you just to spite Kathy, and I'm gonna be thinking of her every time that I'm with you. Do you want me to stop? And she's like, no, all breathless, like wet with excitement, dripping, like flooding this entire house. She's gagging for it. Gagging. And I understand in the sense that back then it was really hard to find men with good skin. Jacob Elordi must have either really good genetics or a really good skincare routine. Either way, Isabella's capitalizing on it. But also she's a freaky deek and she wants to be treated like a dog. Then time passes and Kathy's really depressed at home, and Heathcliff uses Isabella to write letters to Kathy, basically trying to bait them into responding. Edgar doesn't want to talk to them. I think he's mad that Isabella married Heathcliff, and Kathy is heartbroken and depressed. And Nellie is isolating Kathy on purpose because Nellie thinks that Kathy's duty is to deliver this baby and continue the legacy of the Earnshaws. But Kathy don't want that. Kathy wants Heathcliff's big, bulging arm around her. Yeah. So Isabella writes letters for Heathcliff to send to first Nellie, then Kathy, and Nellie just keeps burning them all and telling Kathy, nope, no letters came for you. So Kathy goes on a hunger strike. She decides, I'm going to stop eating. And Nellie's like, oh, you want to be a child? I'm going to let you act like a child. Carry on doing that reckless shit. I don't care. Whatever. And this whole time I'm just thinking he is so desperate to talk to her. Couldn't he just hop on his horse and go over to the estate, like demand to see her, throw rocks at her window, be like, hey, I'm here. Like, we need to talk. Walk up to Edgar and punch him in the face and walk up to her room and sweep her off her feet. I don't know, do something. But instead, no, it's just like, oh, write letters. You need to be more forceful. And then in one of the letters, she pretends like Heathcliff is abusing her and he's a monster and she needs help. And Nellie reads that and just burns the letter. And then she visits them. And this is so... Nellie gets there and Isabella has a collar around her neck and she's chained to the wall. And Nellie's like, what is this? And Heathcliff is like, oh, she loves this. There's no depravity that's too depraved for her. And then Isabella just crawls over to him like a dog and she starts barking. And he's like, if I walk away, will you be desperate to see me again? She's like, yes. And then he even unclips the chain from the wall, drops it on the floor to signal like she's free to go. She's here because she wants to. And then she winks at Nellie like, I am home. She wants it. Oh my God. That girl in a dark room would be diabolical. And again, you could argue both ways that this is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. I'm not going to do it for the movie. I personally felt it was cheap and easy. It was like an easy gag. Like, oh, she's so depraved in this society. Like, she literally wants to be a dog. Kinky. Sure, Emerald. I mean, I don't know what you were reading in Oxford, but... okay. And then one day Nellie snaps and she turns to Catherine and tells her enough is enough. You're going to get out of this bed and stop the theatrics and stop playing the victim. And Kathy's like, oh no, I can't. And she looks awful. I don't have any clips because the movie's not out yet, but Margot is pale. She looks like she's dying, and Nellie pulls the covers to see signs of sepsis on her legs. Like, sepsis has settled in. She's lost the baby. It's been rotting inside of her for a while now, so Nellie finally calls Edgar and admits that she thought Kathy was exaggerating. Edgar fires her straight away. She goes to Heathcliff, tells him the truth. Heathcliff hops on his horse, rushes to see Kathy, only to get there and she's dead already. But before he gets there, the shot of Kathy dead in her room, again, just beautiful, gorgeous visual. She's like in the middle of the room and there's like a pool of blood coming out of her. It's very grim, but gorgeous visuals. So Heathcliff gets there, she is dead, and he holds her corpse, begs her to come back to torment his entire existence. And then we get some flashbacks of them in the past when they were growing up together and, you know, she was treating him like a dog and he was not happy about it and all that. It's just so romantic. And the movie ends with her dead. Now, I know that the novel, this moment happens like before we're even halfway into the novel, and then Heathcliff goes on to be like just an awful person. And mind you, both Heathcliff and Kathy are portrayed as pretty deplorable in the movie, but not deplorable enough that you'd want them to die, but also deplorable enough that you're not rooting for them. Like, they're not full villains, but they're not nice people either. But the gorgeous gown that Margot wore on at one point, it looked like liquid something just hugging her skin so beautifully. I mean, this is just beautiful. Like, this woman looks so decadent. But as for the story, it was pretty disappointing. And then I kept thinking about the press tour and all the interviews they gave and how this movie was being marketed and how Margot was saying in interviews that Emerald built them shrines on set, like in their little private rooms, and it was like this real creepy shit. But they were also trying to play off like this chemistry between Margot and Jacob in real life, like mimicking the characters, which is something they always fucking do in these movies. They always try to parasocialize this whole fucking thing to the point where fans again are confusing actors for characters and they're shipping people that they shouldn't be shipping, and then you get headlines about Margot Robbie having problems in her marriage. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, just let characters be characters. Ask actors about the process of filming the movie. Ask actors about their opinions on how many changes to the novel there were. Ask actors what they think about the movie's inability to actually address any of the themes of the novel. And I'm not saying that she should have addressed all of the themes. I'm saying I don't understand why she would want to call this Wuthering Heights, however loosely adapted it is, and even putting in the quotation marks because it's just her interpretation and her vision. I feel like if you're going to do this narrow of an interpretation and change this much just to fit a vision that you had while reading a novel, you could literally call it anything else other than Wuthering Heights. It doesn't even feel like they're trying to capitalize on the book's popularity because I don't even know if the book is popular enough that it would signal like a box office success necessarily. But also, who gives a shit? So much discourse was happening around this. Like, fans of the novel were complaining, but then other fans of the novel were not complaining. And then you had people who have never read the novel that were just excited for a beautiful piece of media. I feel like the visuals are doing all of the heavy lifting of the movie. I didn't even think the acting had like any insane great moments. I was pretty disappointed overall. It was strange. Do I think it warrants all of the attention and all of the conversation it's generating? Absolutely not. It's also really long. It's like 2 hours and 10 minutes, which is just far too long. An hour and 45 minutes is the ideal time for a normal film. And since this is such a short portion of the actual story, could have been slightly shorter, could have been more precise, but alas, it's Emerald Fennell's vision and it's her world and we're all just living in it. Would I recommend watching this film in cinemas? You know what? Probably, because it really is that beautiful. And I think the best way to enjoy this film is to just forget about the novel completely. Like, ignore its existence, ignore any of the knowledge that you have of the story. Just try and go in with like a complete fresh blank mind. Because I think I enjoy the movie more not knowing anything about the book than once I started reading into things and learning more about what actually happens in the book. Like, it just feels, I don't even want to say it irresponsible to ignore all of that, to forego all of those elements just to focus on what you wanted the story to have been. It's not irresponsible per se, but it is kind of like, really? This is it, girl. Come on. Like, if you're going to ignore all those elements, at least make the ones that you focus on the star of the show, like make them shine. And I really didn't like this love story between these two characters. I don't know if it was a casting, I don't know if it was the script, what it was. I didn't feel that yearning as much as I guess other people did, but I may be alone in this. I don't know. Let me know what you think, what you thought if you've watched the movie. I'm guessing, oh, there's a mosquito. Hoo, hoo, hoo. Let me know if you've watched the movie. What did you think? If you've read the book, what did you think? Well, actually, no. Ignore the book. Actually, just what did you think of the movie? As a film, as not an adaptation, because as just a film, I still think it's pretty meh. It's pretty mediocre. It's easily the worst of the three, but it is the most beautiful of the three. So it's the worst of the three, but it's the most beautiful of the three. You win some, you lose some. It is what it is. It's life, it's balance. And I think that's it for the day, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, make sure to leave it a like down below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. We have weekly conversations about stuff. So yeah. And if I've convinced you at all to go watch this film, wow. I mean, yeah, that's great. I wasn't trying to. I was just yapping. And until next time, stay safe, stay sane, stay stupid, and stay stuttering. Bye, guys.